Marwa was brought up as a child in the beautiful desert of Thar. Her family adored her. She, like other young girls, worked hard on her household chores. When she was 18, she was married to a farmer of her own ethnic group and religion, a Hindu Kolhi. This group is quite low in the social hierarchy, but for Marwa, her husband, and their large family was like her little heaven. They were on their own lands and owned enough animals to survive. The harshness of the terrain and struggle for survival was softened with the love of her family, but not for long. Drought hit their area so badly that Marwa and her family, like thousands of the residents, had to say goodbye to their homeland and move in search of livelihood. In the times of drought, families migrate to the irrigated lands and try to find work as laborers wherever they can. Marwa and her family were told by a friend that one landlord was hiring and giving good advance. They rushed to try their luck and were very happy that their days of roaming about in search of food were over.
पेरी 8 साल में जमींदार कने नवा कोट लवंग चौंडिया कन में हाली था जमींदार का 4000 रुपया टका भी दियो तमे का फसल आले पोखो अमी 4000 लेनदार फसल.
That was exactly 7 years ago. We were taken in by a landlord who gave us an advance of 4,000 rupees per family and allowed us to make our huts on his land. He said if we worked hard on his barren land to make it fertile and grow crops for him, he would split the income with us and give us an advance every year. We made our huts, about 4 to 5 in one enclosure. They made a fence around each cluster. We were happy because we thought our bad days were over. We had no idea that our bad days were just about to begin. The first year was not so bad. The work was beyond my capacity, but at least we had food. I would get up at 4 in the morning with other women. We would clean and cook. We ate in the morning and took some food to the fields with us. Those were our only 2 meals as we came back to our huts at nightfall. Men were taken where more hard work was needed, like making or clearing of irrigation channels, preparation of land, and weeding the crop. We women were kept separate from our men. We were taken for tasks like weeding or cotton picking. Sometimes I saw my husband and sometimes I didn't. Mostly I saw him when he would come for food by midday in the fields where the women were working. I was allowed to sleep at night and so were most of the women, but men were made to work at night many times. The landlord had 2 sons. They were called kamdars. They divided the land between small groups of women and gave us impossible targets to keep pressure on us. Every day some woman would become prey to their beating. They beat us harshly with a long stick. Even when our men were close by and saw this brutality, they were helpless and could not do anything. At night we would try to comfort each other. These kamdars had other men who were kept to terrorize us and make us work harder. These were ugly gangsters. Altogether, I remember there were about 15 or 16 men who used to hover around us and our menfolk. I was terrified of them and also hated them. Our children played around where we worked. As they grew older, they were put to work. They worked close to us or were taken away to do chores at their homes or in other fields. They also lived in fear like us. The second year was worse. They didn't give us any money, but our loan, we heard, went up quite a bit. There was a gunman guarding each cluster of our huts. They guarded us at work. We were not allowed to leave or even openly talk to each other. Our families could not marry our children without the permission of the landlord, and it had to be within this community. We could not even think of taking a sick family member outside this area or to visit a relative. We lived in a prison. Those who tried to leave were hunted down and beaten up. We were made to work in chains until the supervisors thought we were docile enough to work without them. They would give us rice or wheat flour per family. If it was just a couple, they gave 5 kilos for 2 weeks, and if we had a family, they gave 10 kilos for 2 weeks. They did not give anything else: sugar, tea, salt, nothing. All we had was bread, and at times we would bring green chilies or onions from the fields to eat with our bread. One day they took a woman aside in the bushes to rape her. They said she had not completed her target. I yelled at them and said, "God will ask you about the havoc you have played on our lives. How much more can we work?" My protest was noted intensely. I was beaten up but was also tagged to be a rebel who dared to protest. The agents of the Kamdar raped women more often than he did. They threatened them not to make noise. I would keep my eyes closed and would speak when it became unbearable for me. I became a victim of their brutality also. No one was spared. One day, when I couldn't tolerate the brutality on a young woman, I spoke up again, and they put a gun on my forehead. This they had not done before. They wanted to kill me in rage. I ran to the huts and hid in the house of one farmer who worked on the neighboring feudal's lands nearby. Most of us were Hindus, but there was a Muslim family also. The woman was a little fairer than us and more beautiful. The senior worker of the Kamdars had kept her for himself. He sent her husband away on the pretext of some work and moved into his house. He raped her over and over, and no one living around was able to do anything. Whenever she got a chance to talk to us, she prayed she could die to get out of this misery. The last 2 years were like living in hell. The feudal used to come once a week, but the sons lived there. They had a house close to where we all lived. The other supervisors were a bunch of thugs, gangsters, and rapists whose job was to terrify people. Our loan had increased to 4 lakhs, and not a single penny was paid to us. My sister-in-law was young and attractive. Our women keep their faces veiled, but one day the son of the landlord looked at her and liked her. He ordered that she should be brought to his house for him. We all were terrified. Her husband protested to whatever extent he could. They usually raped women and left them to their families. This man wanted my sister-in-law in his house. We could not sleep that night. We didn't know when they would come to get her. The next day, when my brother-in-law was working, they killed him. We were all shocked and didn't know what would happen next. My sister-in-law knew they were clearing the path to her. She was like a zombie. We all were even afraid to cry. The whole Hari community was up until late at night. They were waiting for their next move. My husband and I pretended to be asleep, but we kept talking to each other quietly. We were so uncertain about what tomorrow would bring for us that we just didn't want to wait around. We planned to escape. My husband and I waited until everyone was asleep, and then we made our move. Because of my brother-in-law's murder, the security and the people themselves were not on their usual routine. We managed to find a way out and then we ran. We ran all night through the bushes and ditches without knowing where we were headed. The pain of leaving my children behind was killing me, but we hoped that we could get some help for all of them. We finally managed to get to the police and some organizations that help runaway Haris. We were told that our country had a law which forbids landlords to keep us as slaves. After a lot of effort over the months, we finally managed to bring the police with us to recover all the slaves of our landlord, but fate was not with us. The private force of the landlord opened fire on the police when they were loading the Haris into a truck. They took away many of the ones we were about to rescue. I was so happy to hug my children, but I was torn when I learned my 5-year-old son had been taken back. They had already killed my brother-in-law and taken away my sister-in-law. I could only save their children. Some who we saved said she had been seen at his house. Some said they had killed her. Some said he had married her. We are not sure what happened to her. Even if she is alive, she would be miserable living with the murderer of her husband and without her children. I've been living in this camp now. My heart still pains for my son who would now be about 12 years old. I hope someday I will see him. Here at the camp, I do labor work and tend to my family. Life is still very hard for me and my family. There is little water, no place where we can go if we are sick. We are very far away from a city, very few options of livelihood, but then I don't pray for comforts. I'm very happy crushing stones. At least I don't live in fear. People complain about these camps, and I say it's okay if we don't have facilities. We have something to eat, and we can live with dignity. That is a lot for me. I thank God for it.